One of the most rewarding things you can do is reread all the books you hated in high school. Sometimes, like with Flannery O'Connor, maybe you still don't connect with them, but you just gain an appreciation for the formal mastery, the way that she could create setting and character with just a couple of sentences. And other times, like with The Sound and the Fury, you find a book you just weren't mature enough to handle in high school, but as an adult, you start to realize why it's one of the most important books ever written. And so I was pretty excited a few years ago to go back to a book that I absolutely detested when I read it first in 10th grade, Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Now, in Melville himself, I found kind of a spirit animal. This is somebody who didn't read a lot of literature growing up, but as he read it as an adult, he became obsessed with it. His first novels were adventure stories, and they were very successful. But as he dove deeper into the world of literature, he found that that's what he wanted to create, stories that transcended place and time to tell something special about the human condition. From the introduction to the copy I have here, Melville dove into literature with the wide-eyed eagerness of the autodidact, hungry for the resources of the world's great books. And the more he read, the more he wanted to emulate what he read, until he could not, simply could not, write any other way. It was hard for me not to see myself in those words. My best-selling books, even to this day, are revenge stories like Sin Walks into the Desert, or police mysteries like The Single Staircase. Whereas the books that I've been writing now, the books that I've been excited about, like The Nihilistic Cats, they've really struggled to find an audience. Their sales are basically zero. Moby Dick begins with this gorgeous description of how alienating modern society is for people. Whenever I find myself growing grim about the mouth, whenever it is a damp, drizzly November in my soul, whenever I find myself involuntarily pausing before coffin warehouses and bringing up the rear of every funeral I meet, and especially whenever my hypos get such an upper hand of me that it requires a strong moral principle to prevent me from deliberately stepping into the street and methodically knocking people's hats off, then I account it high time to get to the sea as soon as I can. This is my substitute for a pistol and ball. Melville saw the sea not just as an adventure, it was the antidote to modern culture. It was the only alternative to suicide. And with those words, I started reading out loud. I just loved everything that he was saying for the first few pages. But after a while, I started to develop repeated problems with the book, things that really made it difficult for me to get through the text or even care about what was going on. There's three main reasons for this. First of all, Moby Dick is not about what you think it is about. Like, you probably remember the sailor Ishmael and the way he gets caught up with mad Captain Ahab and his search for the white whale. And that's in here. That's not in the book. But every third chapter is just a Wikipedia entry on whaling. Now, sometimes these chapters, about how to rig the sails or how to cut off a whale's fin, sometimes Melville tries to bring them back around and make some grand point about humanity. But a lot of times that point is really strained. And I started to get the suspicion that maybe his vision was a little loose as he started this book. Maybe he didn't have a voice in mind. Maybe he was literally just writing off the top of his head the entire time. Related to that, there are rapid tonal changes throughout the text. There are educational chapters. There are chapters right out of an adventure novel. There's some gorgeous poetic chapters in through the middle, and there's moments of authorial intrusion where Melville just sort of drops into the story to give you his opinion. Now, I like maximalist literature, but I couldn't shake the feeling like these moments weren't being planned. They weren't done for any purpose other than Melville was feeling this at the time, and he was desperate to communicate something and maybe worried that he wasn't getting his words across with the fiction. And this leads to my third struggle with Moby Dick, is that there are chapters that I'm fairly convinced are just gibberish. For instance, on page 114 in my copy, there's a sentence, "His grand distinguishing feature, the fin, from which he derives his name, is often a conspicuous object." And in my marginalia here, I wrote, "His feature is often an object? WTF, this is not a sentence." And so I put the book down, convinced that I was right in 10th grade. It just isn't that good. But as I started to go back to it and look at the things that I underlined, I kept finding moments of beauty, moments of insight, moments of passion that you just don't find anywhere else in literature. "O life, 'tis now that I do feel the latent horror in thee, but 'tis not me, that horror is out of me. And with the soft feeling of the human in me, yet I will try to fight you grim phantom futures." It has this gorgeous Scandinavian quality to it. Just like even though we all know we're doomed, we need to keep fighting. Or on page 295, as the three boats lay there on that gently rolling sea, gazing down into its eternal blue noon, and not a single groan or cry of any sort, nay, not so much as a ripple or a bubble came up from its depths, what landsman would have thought that beneath all that silence and placidity, the utmost monster of the seas was writhing and wrenching in agony? There is so much going on just beneath the surface of our lives and of this novel. But it's also such a slog to get from moment to uncover those things. And so, do I love this book? Do I hate it? Maybe the answer is both.